And also ensure that if you have a webcam, then it's quite nice to turn it on so that it's easier to connect. And before moving forward, we'll also do some introduction with the newcomers. So I can see a couple of people who are new on this specific call. So Victor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Linus, I'm here to learn, so I'm not sure adding my name helps or not. Be interested in disaster recovery. So in this meeting, I really just to look to see what is being released, what is as part of the Meshery product.
That's great. And Akshay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Nice. Yeah, you said Akshay, right?
Yeah.
Captain, my captain. Akshay introduced yesterday in yesterday's Meshery meeting, which was nice. I think he had an open PR at the time. It might be merged now. Akshay, if you're there. Oh, yeah.
Hello.
There he is.
Yeah, actually, yeah, the PR got merged, which was pretty cool. And yeah, my name is Akshay Sharma, and I am a third-year student. And I have recently joined Layers 5 as a contributor, and I have been actively contributing in typos and front end basically, and still learning few of the DevOps scene as a beginner. And I think it's going to be great. That's about it from my side. Thank you.
Thanks for joining in. And next is Suruchi. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Lee. Hi, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, so I have joined Layer 5, I guess, last week and have started contributing to some beginner first issue. And one of my PR got merged yesterday, which was a great experience for me. And I'm currently learning and I'm starting contribution to Meshery repo. So yeah, I'm excited about learning. Thanks.
That's great. Your first PR is already merged. So I think we have covered everybody. The rest all are the regular folks. So let's start with our first standing item, which we discuss in all of our calls. That is Meshery's test plan. So this is a spreadsheet. I'll just share the link in the chat. And basically, this spreadsheet gives an overview of different tests that Meshery runs on its different repositories. So this specific, there are different kinds of subsheets which cover different areas. So this specific sheet is all about specific end-to-end tests and the test, the action which it runs, basically what kind of action it tries to run. And like if you want to install Meshery on a Kubernetes host, or you want to install Meshery without a specific adapter, or then this gives an overview of what should be the expected outcome, and whether it's being currently covered by any of our E2E tests. If you are new and you don't know, end-to-end test basically means testing one of the complete functionality of a whole feature. Let's say if you want to test whether Meshery is able to start on a Kubernetes host, then we would check all of the different areas, like whether Meshery CTL is able to provision Meshery on Kubernetes, whether it comes up properly on a specific port and stuff like that. So like we have gone over this quite a number of times, and basically the ask in the spreadsheet is to ensure we convert all these reds into green, basically covering all of them in our current testing scenarios. And as you can see, most of them are not being covered. And this is also quite outdated based on we have progressed quite far with help from other people in the community like Philip. So like the ask is like, first of all, who would like to like help in ensuring that these tests are covered? The way we would be going forward would be that if you would like to work on this specific scenario, you can create an issue on Meshery repo, and then we can move forward with that. So I can give an explanation of what an end-to-end test is from this Meshery issue adapter. So if we go to workflows, Meshery Istio adapter is an adapter of Meshery, which helps to interface Istio service mesh and help in getting different functionalities of Istio service mesh exposed to Meshery. And if we go to E2E test file, so what this particular end-to-end test does is that it first of all provisions Meshery through mesheryctl, then it starts the Istio adapter, the specific one, and as you can see, and then it deploys some of the sample applications of Istio service mesh as well as Istio control plane as well. And what we do then is that we check for these assertions. We check whether these specific ports comes up or not. If these comes up, then it's like the test passes. Basically, Meshery was successful in provisioning all these infrastructure on the environment. And if these doesn't, then it's like a failing test and we have to fix that. So
sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry. Pranav, I was sorry to interrupt. A question for you. I was curious about the assertions that are listed there. So this is, or do you know the framework behind the validation of those assertions?
Yes, actually just written in bash script. We are like, this actually calls another workflow, which is in Meshery. So if I go there and show
nice.
that.
Okay. Yeah. So essentially reusable workflow that I guess in a good way and a bad way. In a good way, it uses a bash script to validate the output of a particular workflow result in accordance with what you have typed in for the expected result. That's nice and fairly simple, relatively straightforward. It is not nice from the perspective that it's not really a framework. And, like we had used kuttl in one of our other in Meshery previously. Kuttl, if you guys aren't familiar, is you could go to kuttl with 2 T's and an L and nothing behind it .dev, and it's more or less like a Kubernetes assertion tool to say, hey, this is, you want to assert that something is true inside of Kubernetes, and then use the tool to help you validate that. That might be something to move toward. So I'm just highlighting that as in case some of you that are on the call are here long enough to like make something like that happen. It's yeah, like I said, we had forked the project previously, kuttl, and we're using it in some of our SMI conformance. We were using it for conformance tests, and we could be using it over here. And it might be a little bit better for specifically that type of a test. If the test is like, hey, run mesheryctl, it's supposed to provision some things, go verify that those things have been provisioned in Kubernetes, like then that tool is made for that. It can be helpful in that regard. There are any number of other tests that may not fit that mold necessarily, maybe not. And I really desperately want to digress for a moment to say, like, part of where bash can be helpful, or at one point we were using bats. Some of you, everybody here is hopefully too young to know what bats is, maybe including myself. I'm not sure. It's like bash automation testing system. I don't know. I just made that up. It's something like that. And it's a framework in bash for writing tests and then running, it's a test harness. It's a test framework in bash. And we were using that in the Meshery linkerd adapter. And we eventually consolidated to this approach because we had so many adapters. We have so many adapters. I wanted to give a quick example, if you guys will allow me, of where use of bash might be helpful for capturing some of these non-Kubernetes validated things. And so I'm going to share for just a moment, because I just ran into this, and this is potentially a big old hairy deal, or not a big old hairy deal, but it's an urgent item to potentially fix. So if you're not aware, we're going to do some Hacktoberfest stuff. So that's what that's about. But let me make this larger so everybody can see. I think we've got maybe something of a nasty little blocker for those that might go to interact with mesheryctl for the first time. Let's let's just verify some things. So on my system, I'm going to start up Docker. By the way, if I went to use Meshery CTL and it relied upon Docker, a Docker engine being available, the CTL would actually start. It'll ask you, would you like me to start Docker for you? And it would. I'm going to use this context, this mesh config. It's a very simple context that describes a Meshery deployment. So I have called my Meshery deployment, just like a kubectl context, there's a Meshery context. And it just describes, like I just said, a Meshery deployment. In this Meshery deployment, we gave that context a name. I called it Docker because the platform that Meshery will deploy to in this context is Docker, which means, hey, spin up Meshery containers in a Docker host. The other supported word here is Kubernetes, which means spin up the Meshery containers inside of Kubernetes. So Meshery is fine running either place. And then for all of the Meshery adapters, it's like, now, in this case, I'm saying I don't need them at the moment, so I won't run them. And the rest of this you can kind of read. It's like, if I have an API token, where's that at? What version of Meshery do I want to run? If I want to use of the provider decision that you usually get faced with when you first bring up Meshery and you choose a provider, it's like, which one do you want to use? Well, I'm pre-selecting that here. And then where is the endpoint to Meshery's UI, to Meshery server? And it's listed there. So that's the whole config. It's very small config. And so anyway, the point of what I was trying to do is to say that I think we might have there's an end-to-end test that we would hopefully be failing, and that I don't know that, I'm not sure if we are or not. I'm running Docker desktop version something. So I'm sure that it's the latest, which is 4.23. I was taking a look at our Docker extension. Some of you don't know that we're a Docker partner, or we're partnered with Docker, and we were part of their release announcement for extensions a year ago. DockerCon is coming up here in just a couple of weeks. Last year, we announced a partnership with them, and there were like 9 extensions originally released last year. So we were there. Many more have come out since, but I was just doing a test to make sure that our extension is doing well. And while I was doing that test a moment ago, it seemed to be that the deployment was failing, this very basic use case. Eesh. And it is. One of our contributors, Mohammed Zaki, had, I think it was him, had recently changed some logic here. And I think we're probably getting in our own way. We're failing. He's performing a check to make sure that he's performing a check about whether or not we're inside of the Docker group, or whether or not the Docker group is available. And his check is probably getting in the way of actually starting Meshery, because this isn't an actual issue per se for Meshery server to start up. It may or may not be an issue subsequently when you try to deploy a Meshery adapter. When Meshery server itself tries to spawn children and tries to create adapters, if you tell it to, it might have an issue then. I'm not sure. But what I do know is this is probably not good, and this might be blocking any number of, it'd be nice if some of you that are on the call, if you've got Docker handy, if you were to just verify on your systems, if you experience this same issue. In part, as you go to start your Docker engines, and as you go to run a command like this, mesheryctl system start, part of what's happening here, part of the consideration that's going on, I was saying the reason that he's checking, that contributor is checking for this permission, is so that Meshery server can dynamically deploy its own adapters, its own containers, and it would need to have certain permissions to do that. Well, the reason it might be having an issue on my system might have something to do with, well, Docker contexts. Yeah, we're talking about Meshery contexts and Docker contexts. So a similar kind of a thing for Docker. I forget what the commands here even are, but on my machine, I've got two contexts, two Docker contexts, a default one and a desktop Linux one. And so let me not mislead you by explaining the differences, other than just to say they run at they expose themselves at, which sounds kind of bad, but they expose themselves at different endpoints. This desktop Linux, if I were to change the Docker context, perhaps I won't bump into this issue, because sometimes contributors hard code stuff that they shouldn't and don't consider things holistically and introduce bugs. And so let's see if, I don't know what the commands here are. Spec, create, show, update, use. And so I am interrupting today's regularly scheduled broadcast to take on this urgent issue that is DevOps centric, is show, update. So we would use default. All right. And if we did a mesheryctl system start, let's see if we get the same failure. So that's not it. And so it's saying that, so I'm just running Docker desktop. This contributor runs Linux, the guy that had done this. And so he is maybe not running Docker desktop, which would mean that like the user groups and things aren't necessarily the same across systems. And here on my system, the groups are, I don't know that they include Docker, although they should. Yeah, go ahead. You were going to say. And there isn't a Docker group. There isn't a Docker group. And so to the extent that that check is running against my local OS, Mac OS in this case, then yeah, it would fail to find that. And so there's a fix that's needed there. So cool. So the moral of there's a few different things to have taken away from that this whole thing. One is, hey, we probably somewhere along the way, the end-to-end tests that we're running for mesheryctl that you were just referring to, either they're failing and we're not paying attention to that, or they're passing but not running in this type of environment. So they're running in a similar Linux environment, similar to the guy Zaki who had created this, and missing this other consideration. So that's something to check on. And our current mesheryctl check tests passing? And if they are, then how do we augment them to account for this type of a scenario? Two, we need to go revert his PR probably, or do a fix or revert his PR. And yeah, and then you could have taken away some other things as well. One, yes, Docker has contexts if you weren't aware. And oh yes, Meshery has contexts if you weren't aware. Meshery's contexts are one and the same type of concept as Kubernetes contexts. So mesheryctl can primarily, it does a few things, but one of the things it does significantly is like control Meshery deployments. And you may have any number of Meshery deployments. And so that each context represents a Meshery server deployment. Yeah, that's the other thing that you might have taken away. So I'll take the responsibility to go chase the rest of this down to get it fixed. Did anyone else get a chance to test while we've been on this call? Anybody else can run mesheryctl system start. Are you seeing the same error?
I'm using Linux and it seems fine on Linux. Ubuntu.
Nice. That makes sense. That's good. Thank you for that, Daniel. That's good. Anybody else? Anybody running, whether you're doing Windows or Mac OS? Anybody else?
Yeah, and I should also specify I use just the Docker engine. I don't use Docker desktop.
Nice. Thanks for that too. Yeah, that because as of last year, there was a Docker desktop for Linux. If you run, I'm curious, I have this hunch or suspicion that part of this has to do with the context that's being used or the way in which they're performing this check. If you do a Docker context list, do you have multiple contexts or just one? By the way, it's a small call, so all of you are welcome to answer the same questions or try the same things.
I only have one.
You only have one? Okay. And that might actually, yeah.
I'll just be listening in and learning a lot because I'm new to this.
Thanks for saying that, though. Thanks for speaking up. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, there was a contributor prior to Zaki, Azul, or that was also working in this area and had a real challenge trying to figure out how to interact with Docker contexts. And so just based on the fact that there are two contexts on my machine might be part of the issue. Daniel, again, you said that you are not using Docker Engine. Docker Desktop, you've just got Docker Engine locally installed and a single context and okay. And on Linux, Ubuntu. So, okay. Okay. That helps. That's good. I'm going to go open an issue. We'll see if we can get this fixed.
Okay, so moving on, I also wanted to give an overview of we have about a compatibility matrix, which is like based on all the E2E tests that we run, these get updated nightly on a regular basis based on whether any of the adapters are failing or not. And so there is also a need for fixing this because currently there are UI issue. As you can see, each adapter is passing. Okay, actually, no, this is also like not completely correct because few of the test passes, few of them don't, and we show 0%, like 0% pass percentage, so which is not correct. And for few of the adapter Linkerd, like same problem is there. So I wanted to ask if someone would like to work on this specific area where we ensure that we give the right percentage and we also update this regularly, because even if their adapters are failing right now, this specific one, but we are not showing that. Any takers on the call? You can also ping on the Slack channel. We can discuss there as well. So, okay, so that was our test plan. And now we have our regular items, which we'll be going over. So first is from Rajdeep about discussion on WASM filters publishing on our Meshery catalog website. Okay. Rajdeep, are you on the call? I think he is not. So we can probably skip this item. If you want, I can give an overview very quickly. That is on meshery.io, this specific website's repo, what we have is a workflow that automatically looks for new catalog items which are published on a catalog. So, okay, so what catalog is like? Meshery has its own catalog on meshery.io/catalog. And how this gets updated is if you have used Meshery either locally or either any of your deployed environments or in Playground, then you have an ability to publish an item to the catalog so that you can share it with any of the community members or your teammates. So the workflow is all about looking for new updates in the queue, and if it gets approved by any of the maintainers, then it gets updated here. So currently you'll realize that we are just showing our designs, but we are not showing our awesome filters. Even though they are here, it's just that they're not showing on this view. Like if we know the UUID, then we can see that. So the fix was about that. And this is that workflow which does that thing nightly on every day in morning. And it just, what it does is that it fetches the remote provider, gets the newly updated catalog item, and then makes them into the specific Jekyll format so that it can be published on the Jekyll website into basically a YAML file is created, and then we create this file, put it into these collections. Same thing for filters. So this just requires a very quick fix. We already have the item. We have to just find why it's not being shown on our homepage of this thing. So I don't know if Rajdeep, we can discuss if he's still working on it. Otherwise, someone else can take this up. It's a very quick fix. So yes. Next item is from Philip, who I think is not on the call. He was okay, so I think we can skip this for now and probably move on Daniel's item on failing mesheryctl test. Daniel, would you like to take this over?
Yeah, let me share my screen. And I think Philip mentioned on the channel that he is sick. He's ill, feeling ill. Yeah. So the particular item I was working on, oops, I lost the meeting minutes. Okay, so there's this test that is failing, and I was looking into the workflow, or rather the logs, and the first thing I had noticed in the previous fix that I did was we were using like a flag called adapter, and then we pass in the name of the adapter that we're using. So using a hint from this is the docs on meshctl. So when I did mesh deploy, I got the hint that we're no longer using that flag adapters. So we just say deploy linkerd, and for this, so I thought a particular fix that we could do is just remove the adapter and then have the actual name of the mesh, like linkerd adapter. But it's still failing because it's not recognizing the name Istio, because Istio is the one that is used in the test. So I just wanted to, I could try and do a few guesses, but I could just confirm from maybe people have here we have more context. Is it meshery Istio or meshery linkerd or just Istio? I think if I get just the specific name of the adapter, then if this part can pass, because this other part is just using the mesh that we've already deployed or on this step to do the test. So if I could get help with that context, is it meshery Istio or just Istio?
Okay, good question. I don't know. It's been such a long time. There's so many places where we've done this. It is, I mean, that adapter is generally healthy, the meshery Istio adapter. And and it says in a couple of different ways, like unable to validate mesh name, but yeah, it's quite, I don't know. There have been a number, like I would definitely go try it with meshery-istio. I'm gonna open up mesheryctl code here now anyway, so maybe I'll take a quick look. That's the mesh deploy.
It's likely it's meshery-istio. You can give the link to struct.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think once we get that, then if this step goes well, then I didn't see much of an issue with this other step. And then just maybe for the sake of testing locally, or if someone could post, there's this file, the auth.json. According to, if I follow the code, it's supposed to be on the home folder that Istio has. Like in my local machine, it's a .meshery folder, but I seem not to get it. If someone could also point me where I can get this file, and then it would help me test the workflow locally before I do a whole PR and then pull in very many people to actually work on that. So those are the things.
Yeah, if you do a mesheryctl system login, you'll have a particular, okay, so this is helpful and not helpful. You'll have an interactive question that asks you the same question when you go to log into the UI, the web-based UI, which provider do you want to use? And so to the extent that you say one or the other, you'll get a token specific to that provider, and that provider, you go through like an OAuth with Meshery, it'll hand you back an auth token. And normally that, if you do it with Meshery, it probably lands in your downloads folder, probably. And then with none, I don't know. But that will at least tell you that that's good information. Having said that, if there isn't a silent command or an auto answer command, then then this becomes bothersome to script out as you do as you're doing the scripting, if you have to try to invoke a selection. Instead, what we do is, if you were to type mesheryctl system context view, one of the parameters that I was just showing a moment ago is mesheryctl system context view. That'll show your current context. There are two parameters in here with respect to the token. And so the token location. And so to your point, or to your guess, like at least in this, as an example, this isn't the same environment, but as an example, in your environment here, your current context is configured to look for the token in the, well, I guess it's a little bit up in the air. Like what is that location? I guess it's wherever you're executing mesheryctl from, which isn't necessarily a good thing. You usually want that more of an absolute reference. And then if you do mesheryctl system token, you can create new tokens or list tokens. You can, and we should probably produce a kinder response here. But yeah, if you did mesheryctl, actually it's just mesheryctl system token. And so if you do like a list or a create or like, this is the other way that you can manipulate that, and you can do it somewhat, you can name your tokens is what I was getting to. So, and have multiple of them, because you might use one token. That gives you a lot more.
Yeah, I think a few pointers that can point me in the right direction. So having that ability to test stuff locally first will really be helpful, so that I think once I'm able to resolve this, then it will be able to get through the problem much faster. Okay.
Yeah, right. It's a major pain in the rump. So Daniel, I think, unless I'm mistaken, the thing that you're pointing out is just in general, when working with GitHub Actions and GitHub workflows, as trying to test those locally and have those runners have a workflow execute locally is ideal, because as you're working through fixing something, you want to test that it actually works, and in my case it never works, and you got to run it 15 times until you get the logic right, and then you're comfortable opening up a PR, because then you think it has a high chance of working. So yeah, historically there haven't been, at least to my knowledge, and my knowledge only goes so far, but there haven't been there haven't been the best solutions. Although I think that there is now a decent solution. So there's a couple of things to say on this topic. One is that not all workflows, even if it was easy to execute locally, not all of them are candidates for local execution, because some of them want to do things like get at certain secrets, or some of them want to do stuff that like you wouldn't even have access to, or it wouldn't even make sense to do locally. Like one of the workflows deploys new versions of Meshery to the Meshery playground. It's like, well, that doesn't really make sense to do locally. You're not trying to. Anyway, the point is, you may or may not be working with a workflow that is a candidate to run locally or not. I'm not sure. Let's just assume that it is. All right. Well, if I was tasked in the same way, I would go investigate running a self-hosted GitHub runner. I should have used a different word. I would go investigate using a self-hosted GitHub runner. In the past, there have been different solutions for running workflows locally, and they didn't work for me. But a self-hosted runner is basically just saying the orchestration engine behind GitHub workflows, you can choose what type of environment you want to run, whether it's a Ubuntu VM, probably the most common, but Mac OS and Windows and other OSs, other machine types, other architectures, you can request. And in the same vein, you're able to register like a self-hosted runner, such that you're able to have a local container such that you can host that environment locally in a container, in like a Ubuntu container. And I haven't done it, but well, I take it back. Like I haven't done it locally. We do it hundreds of times a day inside of the Service Mesh Performance Project. So I can point you to that workflow where we're using the CNCF labs to run to run performance tests against any number of service meshes. And in order to do that, we use GitHub as the orchestration engine, if you will, as the workflow engine to execute the workflow, to install Kubernetes and install Meshery and install a service mesh, and then hammer the heck out of it with a bunch of load that we generate against it, and then do statistical analysis and bring back and then we have a dashboard up that shows what's the fastest mesh in the West, or what's the fastest mesh. And it uses a self-hosted runner. The self-hosted runner is within the CNCF lab, or not the CNCF lab, like it's within an Equinix data center, but it's running on their bare metal systems. Yeah. So that self-hosted runner doesn't run a Ubuntu VM, it runs directly on that OS, which happens to be Ubuntu that we run on those bare metal systems. I hope that helps. I hope that gives you a few things to chew on. I'll give you the link to that workflow so you can at least see what a self-hosted workflow looks like.
Thank you.
Daniel, is there anything else I can do for you today? I just want to check just to see. Just kidding. Yeah, total complete joke. Thank goodness Daniel has something to talk about, and some interesting stuff too. Yeah. Oh, cool. I'll go get that workflow link. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so next item is, I created one item for call for volunteers, because I think there's one easy issue with low hanging fruit which you can plug. That is, like, there is a Slack workflow which is failing or is missing on few of the repo. So what, okay, I can first talk about what this is. So whenever someone starts any of the layer 5 or Meshery repo, then we send a notification on Buzz channel. If you have seen that on Slack on a workspace, so that is done through a workflow that is, let me show. Yeah. So what this workflow does is that it just looks out for any action. Okay, hold on. I clicked on the wrong link. So what this does is watches for an event. Whenever the event is about a star, then it counts the number of stars that this particular repo has, and then it posts a message on that channel based on who starred name of the person who starred the repo and the total number of stars that we have at the moment. And yeah, this is, or also there's one more thing, like if someone adds a good first issue on basically a label on any of the issues, then also it sends a message on our newcomers channel. So there was, like, if you go to CI channel, I've pasted the link. There's a thread which has a number of different issues on different repos, which you can just take. And basically this is all about like reusing the workflow that you already have into other repos. So this can be an easy win in case you want to explore how workflows run and get started with your first PR. So I think there's one issue as well. Yeah, this one. So it also gives you the link to which workflow you have to use, and then just use it in all the repo which currently doesn't have, or if they are failing. So this is another item which some of you can take. Yes, that specific issue is assigned, but I will just give an example. Like if there are other issues as well, which you will find on the Slack thread, which I can give in the link in the chat. So if you'll open that, then you'll find more issues. And there's also a spreadsheet, I don't know, like it's shared so far or not. These also have a number of issues, specifically CI related. So you can have a link on this as well. This is also shared in the CI channel. You can have a look. So this was one call for volunteers. The other is like one item which I did. It's a small item. I just published 5 designs on our catalog. So I can actually give you, first of all, show what I did, then I'll tell you how you can also publish your designs. That's one of the item which I just discussed a few minutes back, but I didn't tell you how to publish, so I'll tell that. So I just published these 5 designs on our catalog, and now I'll show you how you can do. So considering I don't think we have any other items. So first is like, if you haven't already used Playground, so in case you like to get started with Meshery very quickly, the fastest way on the earth is go to play.meshctl.io and just start using it. And this will actually explore, you can all explore all the different cloud native projects and other DevOps related projects, and in a visual way. So sometimes things are not clear when you see it through CLI. So yes, and now I'll go to Playground and show you how you can also do this. So let's say I go to Meshmap, which is one of the extensions of Meshery. And so it has 2 modes. One is designer, another is visualizer. So the number of integrations Meshery supports is through mesh models, and mesh model had a number of constructs. If you want, we can go through it, but it's on a high level overview. It's like models, components, relationships, and policies. And these are categorized into different things. So let's just go with the very known thing, that is Kubernetes. And it not only supports one version of Kubernetes, it supports multiple versions based on which you are connected to your Kubernetes cluster. And of course, you can connect to more than one cluster. So let's say I just want to create a simple namespace. I'll search, and then it will search through all the different components that it supposed. And then just go with simple pod. And let's say I use this. Then like this is my very simple design. And what you need to do is then you can do any configuration which you like to do. And if you want to first ensure your design would be deployed or not on the cluster, you can do a dry run. You can check your cluster is connected. Once you're sure that your design works the way you like, then you can also check in visualizer, but once you are done, you can click on this publish button. What this publish button will do is that it will give you an options to choose between different integration your design integrates with. You can add any of the caveats or consideration which you like for any person to know when they are deploying this design on their environment. And you can give description, and then once you fill all the important information, then you can submit it onto the catalog. Basically, what this will do is that it will send an email to the maintainers, and then once maintainer review your design, then it will be published, and it will be actually visible directly on the Meshery. So as you can see, all these are published design, which any one of us could publish. So yeah, this is a way in which you can publish your design as well. And this is actually explained in a documentation as well. So in case you missed it, so you can just go to catalog, search catalog on a documentation, and you'll find a video as well as steps how you can do the same, which I just discussed. So in first of all, any questions on this in case anybody has about publishing design? This is like an easiest way of contributing, because you can just like look up different examples on internet, learn about how different stuff works in Kubernetes, and then you can order any other specific cloud native infrastructure, and then you can publish that specific design. So yeah, that was one item which I had. The next is about, first of all, any questions on this? I just wait for a few seconds. Okay. So
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's worth discussing for just a moment. There are some of us here that are like me, still learning, you're learning things around Kubernetes or around any of the CNCF projects, and there's, like Pranav was saying, especially if you're like systems administration or DevOps or platform engineering or SRE or whatever you want to call it, focused. Well, that's what this is about. This is like a visual designer, a collaborative visual designer for that kind of a thing. Now, the tool is only so good. Whether it's ready or not, it's time to like tell the world about it. And unfortunately, it's not entirely ready. It does a lot of good things, but well, the reason I'm pointing this out is to say there's a real opportunity to learn and explore all the various 50 to 70 something Kubernetes resources, pods. We all kind of are familiar with that, and deployments and services, and then there's like 60 of them. Depends on your cluster, but there's a lot. And this is a way of like actually just visually browsing through them and exploring them, learning them a little bit. It's a live environment, so you can try to deploy. If you can get it configured, you can deploy it. And this one is one that Intel had created, and that's fantastic because you don't have to run the infrastructure. You can test it, and you can browse through a lot of this. There are like, okay, fine, but that's helpful to you. It's helpful to the project in any number of ways, by the way. When you find a bug, like, or you don't understand what the heck this thing is doing, don't be quiet about it, or like go make some noise, go punch the wall, piss and moan, open up a GitHub issue, open up a message on the discussion forum, talk about, there's all kinds of feedback that the folks that have been working on this are soliciting. They're soliciting feedback like, I don't think it makes sense to have a pod as a circle. It would be a lot nicer if it was a rhomboid. Yeah, that's what it feels like to me. It feels like it should be a rhomboid. And there's like 20 something shapes that are supported. And there's a big long call for icons, like different icons. Like, is it really like the Weave network that's installed in this cluster? It was just on the screen a second ago. Maybe it should be showing the Weave logo, not the Kubernetes logo. Like, all of this is customizable, and there's any number of contributors in the community that are working on this. And actually, that's what I'm asking you to do, is to work on it as well. You can reinforce if you're doing studies of Kubernetes, or not just Kubernetes proper, but like any of the 199 other, or not 219 other integrations. So Prometheus and Jaeger and FluentD and blah, 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 like the list goes on and on. All of those and their configurable components are available as you browse through. Most of them are all circles. That's probably not the best representation for a lot of them. Most of them just carry their project logo. Again, could get more specific. Any number of them, you drop them onto the canvas and you can open them up and configure them. But most of them, as of now, you can't like create a relationship, like draw an edge, draw a line, draw an edge between two of them, or like have one of them become the parent of the next. Or there's a number of different ways of expressing the relationships, and the overwhelming majority of them do not have relationships defined. So the system, the UI here, it doesn't allow you to express those relationships because the models that Meshery uses to represent each of those components and express how they can relate to one another, whatever that type of relationship is, those haven't been defined. They've been defined for a handful of core Kubernetes constructs, but not for much of the rest of these. And so it's like, what a great excuse to go study Istio or whatever one you want to study, come back and say, hey, you know, there's a different icon that maybe you want to think of, or, hey, you know, this one makes sense to only ever be the sibling of this other one. There's a few different, there's like 8 different visual relationships that are possible. And I thought somebody was going to say something, so that are possible. And so that's another call for assistance. It's not necessarily just, oh, I think it should be a different shape, or, oh, I think it should be a different icon. It, like, even more importantly, arguably, is like, oh, like, hey, this thing called a gateway, in case you all didn't know, and I'm speaking, by the way, as if I'm you. So you would come back and say, hey, look, you know, so I heard what you guys had said on the call the other day. I just went over and looked at a couple of components like this Istio gateway. It's, if you didn't know, it's actually just Envoy proxy. It's just an Envoy container, Envoy proxy running inside. They call it Istio gateway. It's just Envoy. Istio configures Envoy and helps it do, it uses Envoy for its data plane. So it's such a network centric thing. Like, hey, wouldn't it make sense if we, were able to draw lines between, like, edges to represent network connections between things? Like, because right now, Gaurav, or that other guy, Pranav, if you were to hover, you don't see a relationship available, right? But can you show the good folks on the call what it would look like if there was a relationship defined? And basically what I'm getting to right now is a very real, so yeah, okay, so this allows for a certain type of relationship. And when you hover your mouse over the component, it shows you what type of relationships are available. Okay, great. So this is a persistent volume claim. Okay, so if your pod had stateful needs, you could draw an edge of type persistent volume claim to a persistent volume if there was a persistent volume here. Okay, cool. Well, in the very same way, and what I'm about to say next is like a fairly well-defined GitHub issue that you could go execute on. That Istio gateway, it needs a relationship defined so that people can express a network connection, an edge between the Istio, that gateway, and, well, any number of other components. That'll be the part for you to figure out. And the way that Meshery, and so what contribution would you do other than just bringing your knowledge and saying, hey, the contribution is the way that a relationship is, I keep on doing hand gestures, I don't know why. The way that you express that relationship is just, it's a simple YAML file. It's relatively small. As a matter of fact, Pranav might even be about to show you what one of them looks like. It's, yeah, they're not very complex. you just kind of identify what type of relationship you think it should be. And some of this, or this thing that I'm articulating right now, I'll pull up the contributor guide for creating models and for creating relationships. This one right here, it is of a specific type. So at the very top of this YAML file, it says that, or on line 17 anyway, or yeah, I'm sorry, line 3 and line 17. What type of relationship is this defining? It's defining an edge relationship. That's on line 3. Edge meaning that line that we saw. Well, there's different types of edge relationships. It might be so on line 17, it says it's of type network. Whereas when we were looking at the pod, it was an edge relationship because it was a line relationship, but it was of type persistent volume. It was of type mount, I think is what we called it. And so you can have, oh yeah, it's good. So anyway, there's a real big need for this. And it's a great way for you all to, such a great excuse for you to go learn, pick a project and like learn a resource and then come back and suggest that certain relationships should be allowed. And yeah, I'll give you the link to where this is explained a little bit more.
So I think we're top of the hour, and there was just one item which I can quickly go over so that new folks don't miss out. That is, like tomorrow there is a Hacktoberfest community call where different members in the community would be going through different items of different areas of Layer 5 community, like how to get started with projects, how to get started with different like designs, or if you're a designer or other things, how to do meshmate stuff and everything that revolves around Layer 5 community. So in case you haven't already registered, so that you don't miss out, make sure you register for this tomorrow's event and ensure that you get so that you are not missed out on this specific event. So yeah, that's about it. So I think we covered all the items for today's meeting, and it was quite interesting. We went over different areas, and yes, I think I'll go, if this issue is not open, I'll open this issue so that we are able to fix that. And yeah, I think that's all for today's meeting. Thank you all for joining, and see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yes, I'll paste those same links into Slack in case people want them, in case it was. But yeah, see you guys. Bye, Sandra. Bye, Daniel. Daniel's still waiting on that number, man. Yeah. Okay, you're gonna hook me up. All right, good. Okay. See you guys.